Hi, I'm your daddy. Hi, I'm mommy. Hi, my name's Kwame. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to this channel, we talk about personal and financial growth. And today I'm talking about the mistakes I made when purchasing my first house. And I'm going to give you some helpful tips and tricks to not make those same mistakes that I did when I did make that purchase. I bought my first house in 2019. That was during the pandemic, and it was a bad time for the planet, but it was a great time to get into real estate. Interest rates were at an all-time low, and although the market was quite competitive, it was easy to get a property at that time. To be honest, it didn't even matter what market you got into. I remember some guys getting into crypto and DeFi and making a killing. I actually tried to get into DeFi, but I ended up getting scammed, although that is a story for another time. But all that aside, contrary to then, now there's a lot of uncertainty. And actually, interest rates are the highest that I've ever seen them in my lifetime. And the Fed rate is around 5% as of filming this video. And mortgage rates are at an average of 7.8%. So I would like to help you guys not to make the same poor decisions I made when I first bought my property, and also to help you guys to make better decisions and actually getting your first property. And I'm going to tell you guys everything that I wish I had done different. And I'm also going to give you guys some research tactics that I use even today that will help you guys to secure your first property. And this will help you to prepare yourself, and especially in times like this, where the market is so uncertain. You don't really know if rates are going to go down, but you do know that rates are what they are today. And so I'll definitely help give you guys the tactics to make that right decision. So I live in one of the most competitive markets on the East Coast. I actually live in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is no doubt an enigma from me talking to a lot of my real estate colleagues. The market in Charlotte is so competitive. We have people moving here from all over the United States, from New York, New Jersey, from Florida. I actually was recently listening to a podcast, and I heard a billionaire investor talking about buying up a lot of real estate here just because this is a hotbed for a lot of property. And so, yeah, Charlotte's a very competitive market. This place is so great. We get 4 seasons. We have great weather, which makes for great conditions when actually doing construction. This is a great market to get into. And I would say North Carolina in general, Raleigh, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, and a lot of other places are actually booming in the market. Even neighboring cities to Charlotte are actually becoming very, very competitive real estate markets. But I say all that to say, I do anticipate other cities are going to follow the same suit as Charlotte. And as real estate gets bought up in one place, investors have to go somewhere else. And so I think the trend is going to be real estate investors moving from state to state, seeing what they can buy, and increasing the competition in the market. Charlotte's growing at a crazy rate, but here are actually some of the top 15 fastest growing cities in the United States. As you can see, North Carolina is listed on here twice, but there are a lot of other cities listed on this too. So the tactics here will work in pretty much any competitive market and any market that is not as competitive as the cities on this list. Finding a house here is like finding cheese at a rat convention. It's not impossible, but it does take a lot of work and a lot of effort to actually find the right property and the right deal. Okay, so with that out the way, I'm going to go into some of the things to consider when you're purchasing your first property. Most people that I've talked to are not looking at their first property as an investment. They're looking for it as a place to live, which is great. And if that's what you want to do, then by all means. But what you should be doing is looking at your first property as a property. It's a home. Yeah, make it your own. Love where you live because you don't want to be miserable, but definitely take into consideration what you're going to be doing with this home years down the line. Most people are probably trying to look for nice cabinets, new floors, a vibrating bed for those late night activities, which is great if that's what you want, but most people should be looking at their first property as an investment. Find what fits into your budget and make sure that you are taking all costs into consideration, and how long you plan on living at the property or how long you plan on keeping the property. Too many people just buy a property without considering appreciation, amortization, added value, tax benefits, or especially cash flow opportunities. So when I bought my first property, I bought it in a great area at a decent price, and I knew going in that it was going to be an investment property. What I wanted to do with this property was I wanted to turn it into a rental at some point. So I went into buying this property intentionally. And honestly, this is by far the best investment that I've ever made. So the only downside I would say is I would certainly have went for or opted into a bigger property, a property with more units and more rooms, meaning a single family home with more than the rooms that I have now, or a multi-family home with more than 2 units. What this allows you to do is to cut your monthly costs in half. And so either renting out the room or renting out the units will allow for you to pay for some of your mortgage. Essentially, those renters are paying for your mortgage. And you may be thinking the bigger the house, the bigger the budget, but if you're already going into your investment, right, knowing that you're going to have renters, you can factor in that added income that you're getting from your renters and deduct that from the mortgage. One thing that I took advantage of was an FHA loan, which essentially, as opposed to having to put down the traditional 20%, you could put down 3.5% as a down payment on the home. The only stipulation is you have to actually live at the home. Some sources recommend having a credit score above 600, but I would recommend having a credit score above 650, but definitely do not let that stop you. Honestly, I'd recommend having the highest credit score possible when going into this, because you're obviously going to have some hard inquiries, which will take down your credit score temporarily, but you don't have to worry about that. But a high credit score will show your lender that you are a worthy borrower. So let's get into the mistakes I made when purchasing my first property. So number one, I was not calculating closing costs properly. There are so many moving parts in real estate, from the closing attorney to the lenders, to the brokers, the selling and buying agents. In most cases, they all have to get paid from the sale of this property, which means that there's going to be a lot of costs associated with the closing for this property. I had estimated that I was going to put down 3.5%, but I ended up paying close to 5% when everything was all said and done, even though I was told I was matched that 3.5%. Just be cautious of how much you're actually going to pay. And don't be afraid to ask your lender or ask, the bank how much your estimated closing costs are going to be. Number two, you can negotiate with the seller, especially in a market like this where the mortgage rates are extremely high. We're actually in more of a buyer's market right now, and you can negotiate all types of things. I actually know a colleague that when he was going to buy his property, he ended up negotiating for the seller to pay for a new roof. And so you can definitely negotiate with the seller to actually make sure that the sale is completed, especially again in this type of market. Number three, again, going back to purchasing a larger space, I would have looked for alternate financing to actually get a larger space, and either rented out the rooms in a single family home or purchased a multi-unit property and rented out the other units. And if I'd done that years ago, back in 2019, then I'd probably be cash flowing in my first property now, or I'd be close to it. That is one of the most popular and profitable strategies when it comes to buying real estate, is offsetting your mortgage. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned how your cost of living, literally the roof over your head, is likely your most costly expense. That you can take the savings that you get from that to either put down more on the principal of your property or put into another property, or even pay down some of the debt that you have. So definitely look for alternate forms of finance to actually get that bigger property with multiple units or multiple rooms. Number four, I wish I knew what amortization was, and I wish I knew how amortization works. And your amortization schedule is essentially your payoff of the principal and the interest. When I went into buying my first property, I didn't realize how costly over time your amortization can be. And so one of the major keys of that is you're actually paying more towards the interest in the first half of your loan. For most people, getting a 30 or 15-year traditional fixed rate, yeah, you're gonna be paying a lot in interest the first half of that loan. And I know a lot of people who actually didn't really realize this until I pointed it out. So I'm actually going to pull up an interest calculator. And if you take a look, you see with this $300,000 house at a 5.5% interest rate over 30 years with a fixed 30-year loan, assuming you don't pay the house off early, you're actually paying upwards of $323,000 in interest alone. And so you're looking at the total cost of your property is double. And so understanding that will actually put the fire to a lot of people to say, hey, I actually want to pay this house off sooner than later, right? Because $300,000 could be going towards another property over the life of the loan. But definitely understand what you're paying for. And number 5, I wish I had understood how interest rates were calculated. So typically your credit score does not have much of an impact on your interest rates. It's actually market conditions and how much you are putting down as a down payment. Also, the Fed rate is a part of that, but I'm gonna touch more on the down payment, which is something you can actually control. So putting down a down payment is otherwise known as buying points or buying mortgage points. 1 point typically equals 1% of the value of the home. And so typically you would have to put down 1 point or 1% of the home to reduce the overall interest rate by 0.25%. Which means if we bring back up that $300,000 home, you would have to put down $3,000 to bring that 5.5 interest rate down to 5.25%. I know I've been throwing a lot of possibly negative things about purchasing a house at you, and I don't want that to discourage you, so I'm going to leave this on a positive note. You deserve a place of your own. You deserve a home that you actually own. You deserve to be able to dress the place up like you like. You deserve to have the countertops you want, the cabinets you want. To design a home that you actually want to. There's so many limitations when it comes to rental properties, and rents are extremely high right now, and I would rather you buy your first property than to throw away another $1,500 to $2,000 a month on a property that you can't even customize to your liking. And so next year, they're probably gonna jack rents up about $150. Where I live, there's no rent control. I think New York is probably, and even in New York, it's only some of the areas, from my understanding, have rent control. And so I know the market conditions aren't the best, but I highly encourage you to at least consider buying your first property and building equity in that property. If we look at the overall appreciation in the housing market, it beats out traditional savings. And so highly encourage you to just consider buying. So I'll end with that. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a day that is just as amazing as you are, and I will see you on the next one.